As I mentioned, Danny Kanell does huge work for CBS Sports Network, CBS Sports HQ, breaking down the NFL and the NFL draft. Tom Fornelli, a big part of the CBSSports.com NFL draft coverage. So, yeah, we get all of the rights. We have all the credentials to be able to wade into the biggest topic of the day in all of sports. Before we get into that top 50 big board, start with sort of generalization, Danny. Like, what's you've been talking about it all week. What are the storylines? Like, what are the things you're really tracking and interested in heading into, let's say, the first round here tonight?
Stating the obvious, I think a lot of it is about the QBs. Like, where are we going? Are we going 1, 2, 3? Are we going 1, 2, 3, 4? And who is selecting primarily that third spot? Do the Vikings, who are pretty desperate for a quarterback, do they trade up with the Patriots? Are they that in love with Drake May to make that move? Are there going to be 5 or 6 quarterbacks go in the first round? I don't think there's no intrigue at 1. I think Jaden Daniels is going 2 to the Commanders. And then it's kind of like, all right, here we go. Because J.J. McCarthy to me has been the biggest riser this offseason, this draft season. I'm not buying it, but we'll see. Because everybody I've talked to, like I saw Jonathan Jones, JJ up in New York, and I was like, come on, man. I'm like, are we getting played with this JJ McCarthy stuff? Like, do these teams really love him that much? And he was like, oh, yeah. He's like, don't be stubborn. Tom's over there like, yeah, he loves him.
I've only been saying it for 2 years.
You have. And yet, did you feel the same about Stetson Bennett? He's a winner, too.
Yeah, but I didn't have Stetson Bennett as a top 10 pick. I said Stetson Bennett would be drafted.
That is true.
When people were just,
But I do think that's a lot of intrigue around J.J. McCarthy. Drake May has probably been the biggest faller of the QBs. Like, he was always, for 2 years, was Caleb Williams, Drake May. Does he potentially drop out of that third spot? I think that'd be pretty surprised if he does. But those are like the quarterback, I think, is obviously the biggest storyline.
Or do you believe in the Drake May falling narrative?
I don't. I still think he's uber talented, but I think he could.
I don't have a good, because I'm not talking to anybody in NFL front office. If everybody in the NFL decides Drake May stinks, then
there's also some of this where you float. I mean, last year there was a lot of speculation around CJ Stroud. Look at the scores, look at the blah, blah, blah. And then he goes 2 and he ends up being the best of all of them. There's always smoke that's thrown out there to try to throw you off their scent. I wouldn't be shocked. Now, the Vegas says you should be shocked if the Commanders take Drake May. I wouldn't. Jaden Daniels, I think, is minus 900 and Drake May is plus 500 or something like that. So the odds makers are saying it's going to be Jaden Daniels. But
what are the limits?
What? Because you would just hammer. You think Daniels?
No, I'm just saying, how much are they willing to let you bet on it?
Right.
That's how it shows. That lets you know how confident they are. Yeah.
Right.
I would be surprised if Drake May falls behind McCarthy. I would be surprised.
I don't think Drake May is drafted later than the 12th or 13th pick.
Do you think he could go to 12 or 13? See, I don't think he drops out of the top 3.
Oh, I don't think he does. I'm just saying, I don't think if he does, I do not see him getting past 12 or 13. Or I don't think he'd get out of the 10, because I think if he falls past those first 3 or 4
somebody
picks,
jumps up.
Somebody's jumping up to get him.
I just think the
Vikings, I think
that young man has every physical tool for everything that you would want for a modern quarterback. And it does not make sense to me that he would fall. Caleb Williams before him, sure, that's fine. But
his tape wasn't great. It was a little inconsistent this past year. He didn't play great against Clemson. Remember the last year?
But he made some incredible throws against Clemson. The overall game wasn't great.
Yeah.
But he did stuff in that game where I didn't see Jaden Daniels, Michael Penix, or Bo Nix making those throws. You know what I mean?
I'm a huge Drake fan. I'm telling you what I've heard and what people are saying about Drake May, which again, I feel like a lot of that is smoke to try to somebody maybe really likes him that is really leaning into these rumors and hoping, hey, let's get him to drop to us or let's maybe make a play for him. That's what I think is going on. I think the criticisms are very similar to Josh Allen when he was coming out of Wyoming. He's erratic. He's doing too much. He's not very accurate. Meanwhile, his offensive line wasn't very good and he's trying to win because he's a competitor. And then you see him. I think he's Josh Allen light because he's not quite as big. He doesn't have the cannon. He's not quite as good a runner. But he's very similar. I think Orlovsky's been saying he's Ben Roethlisberger. I think he's way more athletic than Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah, I think like the most popular comp over the months or years has been like Justin Herbert and then Phillip Rivers because he has been working with Phillip Rivers. But I think the Josh Allen one is much more accurate as compared to what he has been in college and his style of play. You're right. He's not as big as Josh Allen, but he's got a lot of similar traits and concerns to Allen coming out. But I think May's accuracy was far better in college than Josh Allen's was. Like Josh Allen's accuracy
58%.
just yeah, I mean, some of that was the Wendy and Laramie, I'm sure, but like it was also very erratic. I think May's much better, and I do think that like, and we'll talk about my big board. He's the second highest quarterback on my board. And I think some of the problem is when it comes to like the evaluation, because again, quarterbacks drive the story so much and they're so over evaluated that I think after a while, the fatigue of watching these guys, you kind of start to ignore all the incredible shit they're doing. And then you just pay attention to the bad plays. And it's like, oh, this guy stinks. Like the longer I watch him, the worse he gets. It's like, yeah, but he's still making throws that when you watch these other guys, nobody else in this class other than Caleb is making. So it's one of those things to me.
I think like for me to get my honest opinion about Drake May, I really have to kind of crap on that UNC staff. I don't think that they hired a good staff when Longo left. And I mean, yeah.
I mean, he was ACC Player of the Year with Phil Longo.
Yeah.
Yes. If Drake May had transferred to Alabama,
ACC Player of the Year, and then he took a step back and had some head-scratching performances.
If Drake May had transferred to Alabama, which was the rumor that they were trying to get him, are we having this discussion at all?
Probably
I don't
not.
think so. I think he's like a clear number 2.
He might have pushed 1.
Yes, correct. But like, I don't know. I assume NFL teams probably do have a good feel for like this scheme, that scheme, this level of coaching, that level of coaching. I was not impressed with the hires that Mac Brown made when Longo left. I said so at the time. Drake May somehow got worse. I don't think he did a very good job replacing Longo's staff. So I'm putting some of that blame on Longo, but he's not a perfect prospect.
No,
I think some of the criticisms
Mhm.
about the footwork are probably pretty valid,
Mhm.
you know? But like you take Drake May off that team, they're not making a bowl last year, I don't think.
And going back to what I was saying a minute ago too, like you look at the way that they're talked about and the fatigue factor, like it has long been accepted that Caleb Williams is going to be the number 1 pick, right? So people just kind of stopped watching Caleb Williams because they already knew. But the excuses that were there for Caleb Williams last year in his tape, which was not as good as the year before, were, well, the cast around him was bad. He had a bad offensive line. He didn't have a great receiver. Drake May at North Carolina last year. He had a bad offensive line. He didn't have a great receiver. I'm sorry. Devontae Walker is going to be like a 4th or 5th round pick. He's not going to be a 1st or 2nd round pick. But since nobody knows where he's going, they focused on that, and those excuses, they just kind of moved on from it. It's all, well, he's just not that good. It's like, no, a lot of his faults are the same faults that Caleb Williams has. It's just people stopped watching Caleb Williams because we all know he's going number 1.
I will push back on a comment in the chat. I was trying to give him a shout out, see who it was. Said, oh, Matt Welch, Drake May, most NFL ready. I would disagree with that in large part because of what we're talking about, the system he played with. I think Michael Penix is the most NFL ready. He's played the most. His film, I think, from start to finish over the last 2 years, I think it's about as good as anybody's, maybe the best. He throws the deep ball. And as much as credit as we've given the offensive line, and they deserve it, the fact they were so good not giving up sacks, I think is a large part because Penix was directing traffic, getting him in good situations, knew how to get rid of the football. Those things are like NFL traits. Like when you know when to throw it away, picking up blitzes, stretching the field vertically, good little subtle pocket movement. I think he's the most underrated. All of this though, I think whoever goes to the Patriots can have a rough time.
Yeah, should the Patriots
so much of it is fit and where you go. Like if Drake May goes to the Patriots, I'm kind of like, like is he going to survive the 3 or 4 years? Caleb Williams, I think there's some question marks about leadership style, but he probably has the best situation skill set around him than we've seen in a decade, at least for a first rounder and number 1 overall pick to go into. So I'm like, you can think whatever you want about his mercurial style and whatever he does, but I think he's going to have a pretty good year.
Yeah, I mean, look, Penix turns 24 on May 8th. Okay, Drake May is 20.
21.
Penix isn't like a
he
year
turn
younger
21?
than like Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, I mean, look, guys, I like Michael Penix a lot. I think Danny's totally ready on him, or totally correct on him being the most ready quarterback. He better be.
He's tapped out.
He better be good right away. If you're coming in at 24, and turning 25 right after the Super Bowl, like, yeah, that better be a real finished product. I'm not exactly sure why it is, but the track record of guys who are drafted, who are like 24 or more around the draft is horrendous. It's like Joe Burrow and nobody else made it to a second contract in the league. And I think it's because we fall in love with how mature and comfortable these literally grown men are playing a college game in the evaluation. But Penix is kind of weird because he's got huge hands. He does drive the ball pretty well. But I mean, yeah, these old quarterbacks, hopefully he becomes the second guy because I like the kid. But the track record is really bad.
One last thing on the quarterbacks, Nepo babies. I actually think they hit. Let's go. Give me the bloodlines.
Yeah.
Pat Mahomes.
Yeah.
Steph Curry.
There's plenty of data that supports the theory.
Give me. Hey, listen. I'm just saying. Drake May, family athletes, Jaden Daniels, mom's in an NCAA investigation. All right. I'm just kidding. Jokes. I'm not
Jaden
joking.
Daniels also like 40 years old already.
Yeah,
so.
I'm not. Yeah, right. Jaden Daniels threw a touchdown pass to Brandon Ayuk in a game against Justin Herbert.
Yep.
In college, coached by Mario Cristobal.
30 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.